What's up, guys? We got a reaction here. It's MSNBC, so, you know, they're used to peddling that far left hot garbage. So let's see what they have to say. They said Trump embraces QAnon, so let's go see what this is about real quick.
Well, Frank, here we go. So I saw the pictures and was horrified but not shocked. This is where we've been heading. You don't start with footsie and end up anywhere other than tangled up in the sheets together in bed, and that's where Donald Trump is right now with QAnon. What does that mean for the QAnon adherents in America?
Yeah, I saw it as well, and I was astonished by the messaging there. It's actually quite strategic, and certainly nothing spontaneous or accidental about it. When you combine the characteristics of a cult with all the trappings of a religion, you've got a very volatile, dangerous scenario on your hands. And, you know, I frequently refer to the MAGA movement as a form of cult, but clearly if you watch that young...
It's so funny, like, nobody looks at Trump like their idol like that. Like, I don't look to Trump to be any kind of moral compass or anything like that. I want my president to be a bulldog. I want my president to be a leader that when the other leaders sit down in a conference room with him, they're nervous, you know? And right now, we don't have that. Right now, when other leaders sit down in a conference room with Joe Biden, they have to stifle a laugh. So, this whole thing about it being a cult and this, that, and the other, it's no, Trump had balls and he stood for the American people and he couldn't be bought. And he was the first president to ever be like that. So, yeah, at least in my lifetime. So, it was like a breath of fresh air, and that's why people don't want to let him go.
Youngstown, Ohio rally. And if you were to actually take Trump out of the video, just listen to the video, just listen to the audio of the music at the last moments of the rally, plus the crowd. Watch the crowd.
So if you take the video and you take Trump out and then you edit it like this and then you overlap this, then you can create a false perspective. That's what I gathered from that.
And that kind of one word, that one finger gesture, hands raised to the heavens. You would think you're in the final moments of a evangelical worship service in some mega church that's gone mad.
You know, because that don't happen in big crowds when people are there to see someone they admire. Like, you know, you haven't seen 100,000 people holding a lighter up for Metallica or Ozzy Osbourne. Are those cults too? Is Metallica fans cults? You know, like that's such a ridiculous thing to say.
All that it was missing was the altar call at the end. There is a religiosity about this that's extremely disturbing. You know, there's a book out right now that essentially twists Christian theology into asserting that Trump is the Son of Man referred to in the Bible when it's intended to refer to Christ. This author seems to imply that no, actually, there's a Son of...
No, Christ is the Son of God, and Trump, I would imagine his father was a normal man, so yeah, that would make Trump the son of a man. Like,
God, who's Christ, and then there's the Son of Man, and that's Trump. That's where we are today, Nicole. And when you do link to this author seems to imply that no, actually, there's a Son of God who's Christ, and then there's the Son of Man, and that's Trump. That's where we are today, Nicole. And when you do that, you get people who
Christ
are absolutely willing to sacrifice their souls and their lives, because it's no longer about politics anymore. It's about where they're going to spend eternity. And if you've convinced people that this is the man, this is the man, you've got to...
Are they that deluded? Do they think that, like, we just throw down and just bow down on our hands and knees and just pray to this? Is that what they think? Like, y'all are y'all are crazy for thinking that we're crazy for doing something like that, because that don't happen. Like, no one's looking at Trump like an idol, you know? It's just that simple. The man literally said he grabs women by the pussy. So, you know, I'm not looking at him to be my moral compass. It's not like, I should I be a good person today? Well, let me check and see what my president does. Oh, okay, well, he did this, so it's okay for me to do that. That's not what happens. I promise you.
Adore and worship because it's your very soul at stake and the soul of the nation, then you're in a very dangerous situation if power is taken from him, whether it's through an indictment or another lost election. It becomes extremely dangerous.
Frank, I really wish this wasn't the news, but this is the news. And so I'm going to keep going with the FBI's latest reporting that we have on how the FBI.
And that's the other thing with him being afraid of losing power. It has nothing to do with that. It's that he won the election, which according to y'all, the elections are infallible. They're cheating and all that can't happen, although that's not what you were screaming when he won. But never mind that hypocrisy for the moment. It was a non-stop campaign to hinder anything he tried to do and try and get him out of office. And he still managed to run the country better than the last 4 presidents combined. So it's just ridiculous. What we would like, and people would quit being so upset, is if you gave the man a chance to do his fucking job. Like I said, we want a bulldog in office.
Views QAnon. This is from a June 4th, 2021 FBI threat assessment on QAnon specifically. Adherence to QAnon by some domestic violent extremists will likely be affected by factors such as the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic, the level of societal polarization in the United States, social media companies' willingness to host QAnon-related content on their sites, and the frequency and content of pro-QAnon statements by public individuals who feature prominently in core QAnon.
Okay, now if you don't know what QAnon is, we're going to go down the rabbit hole for a moment. QAnon is a conspiracy theory that came out by an individual or a group of individuals named Q, and it was this conspiracy theory that Trump and his team were secretly battling like this ring of pedophiles, and it was them who conspired to try and take the election and all of that against him. It's a crazy theory. It really is. It takes you down a rabbit hole for sure. Now, I'm not saying QAnon is real or anything like that, because I definitely don't think that. But, the whole thing with Jeffrey Epstein, he didn't kill himself. I'll just say that. And, Ghislaine Maxwell, where's her list? If it was Republicans on it, you could damn well bet your left arm that we would know it. So, I don't know. But it's a ring of sex traffickers that is a bunch of high-level politicians and Hollywood elites and tech elites and just corporate executives, and are all part of this giant sex ring trafficking cabal that conspired against Trump, and that Trump and his team were taking them out and holding mass executions and stuff like that against these sex traffickers, and it's wild. It really is. So if you get a chance, look at it. I wouldn't take it seriously. It's, like I said, it's pretty wild, but I guess people were really worried about it. So who knows? You know, a lot of these conspiracy theories tend to have a grain of truth. So
QAnon narratives. So we tick all 5 of the boxes that the FBI warned us torques up the threat that QAnon represents to America. And there's no reporting that suggests that any of the FBI threat assessments are among the documents that were at Mar-a-Lago. But clearly Trump knows this, right? Knows he's playing with fire, knows what the threat environment looks like in the United States of America.
Oh, not only do I think he knows it, but I think that's what attracts him to this. It's like a moth to the flame. And the thing is, he knows that he's increasingly cornered. He's in trouble on so many legal fronts, even criminal fronts now, that this is kind of the almost last act of a desperate man. And you can look at this and go, you know, Frank, be careful, because that young...
Honestly, it looks like it's the last act of a desperate FBI and DOJ. They've literally tried everything else, and they haven't been able to find one thing that he's done wrong. So to me, it kind of looks the other way around. It's almost like they don't remember Trump's past and his legal prowess. Like, Trump has done some crazy legal stuff throughout the years. Like, he was the first person to buy airspace in order to build a skyscraper. How he got Mar-a-Lago, he bought the beachfront property in front of it and threatened to build a skyscraper and block out Mar-a-Lago's view of the beach. And that's how he got Mar-a-Lago so cheap. So it's almost like they don't understand who they're talking about. I mean, he's already beaten the FBI 7 times. And every time it's come out that the FBI was lying, that they fabricated evidence, that they fabricated witnesses, that they were the ones colluding with the Russians, with the Hillary campaign. Literally everything they accuse him of, they are doing.
Youngstown, Ohio rally was actually sparsely attended. The camera shots looked great, right? Just people are stacked up behind him and right in front of him. But largely, there was nobody in that, otherwise in that arena. So you could say, this isn't
not true at all.
And I say, yeah, I got you on the attendance issue. But what is extremely dangerous, based on past histories of cults, is that as they come near the end, as the leader is...
For one, Youngstown, Ohio isn't very big. It's not like it has a mass population in order to have 1 million people, you know. And you were just talking about how big the crowd was in the beginning of all the people holding up their number 1 finger. So which is it? Is it a small crowd or is it a large crowd?
Threatened, they get more and more dangerous, and they do something cult experts call forcing the end. Either the leader calls for the violence, or if the leader's taken out, the members step up and force the ending, whatever that could be. That's what concerns me, and we've learned from January 6th, it only takes a small number.
Let me pause this real quick. Hold on, let me scroll down to the comment. One of the comments reads, "How do we prepare for what comes next? We act before they do, because this will only escalate unless people are held responsible." That's the left right there. But we're the ones that are trying to cause a conflict and bring about the end.
People to do that.
And Frank, we know from Donald Trump's interview with Hugh Hewitt last week that he's put law enforcement on alert. He's told them, my people are going to be mad, mad, mad. And to your point, Frank, here's what an extremist expert said on CBS yesterday about, you know, to your point, it didn't take a lot. It didn't take a lot of cult members when incited by Donald Trump and warned publicly on the Hugh Hewitt radio show to carry out the violence.
So we're no longer Republicans. We're just flat out cult members now. Cool.
He's warned about.
Today, there are 13 million individuals, the equivalent, I should say, of 13 million individuals who support the use of force to restore Donald Trump to the presidency. The problem that we face is that over and over in tweets by the former president, he is deliberately stoking not just the fires of anger getting him political support, but the fires that are leading to that violent the equivalent of 13 million. And that is really the heart of our problem that we face as a threat to democracy. Because if it's just a political threat, well, then we can have elections. But once it's not just denying an election, but using violence as the response to an election denial, now we're in a new game.
So it's all part of a plan charted out on paper by people who study the rise of violent domestic extremism in societies. It just hasn't happened here in a really long time. But the denial of the election result as a political maneuver comes first, and what it precedes is violence. Frank, how do we prepare for what comes next?
This is where the guy made the comment.
So there's incremental steps that aren't even moving fast enough. The electoral count legislation that's coming up in Congress is somewhat helpful to clarify the role of the vice president and how we count the electoral college count. But look, there's a penetration strategy, infiltration of state, local, county election officials, even add now that to over 100, something like 119 people running for office throughout the country that are election deniers. Get them in the House, the Senate, get them in key positions in key swing states as election officials. And now you've got a recipe where we may not even be able to.
It's not that they deny the election. It's that they feel like it was rigged. And there are a number of reasons for that. In my home state, for every 50 Trump signs you see, there's one Biden. I drove across the state the other day. I seen about 119 Trump signs. I seen 19 fuck Biden signs. And not one supporting Biden. It makes no sense. It really don't.
To seek a legitimately elected next president of the United States, because that's the degree of infiltration that's gone on here. And that's a recipe for violence, even as early as the midterms. That could happen. And if I go back in my career to international terrorism, it's that combination of religion and cult status that gets people to the point where they will martyr themselves. We do have a Trump death count. I wrote a column on this for MSNBC Daily, where I start counting up the people who died, from the guy who walked into the FBI Cincinnati field office to people killed at the Capitol on January 6th and others who died because of their belief. That's more than a cult. There is this religious aspect that's.
People have been dying for their beliefs for thousands of years. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. Nothing at all. And to say that it does, you're clearly trying to stoke the left. You're trying to upset the left so much to make it seem like, oh, if they don't do something right now, the right is just going to kick in their door and get them. And that's so far from the truth. You want to talk about fear-mongering and division? That's what this is right here. This is pure propaganda if I've ever seen it in my life. Wow. Like and subscribe.